Hello, viewer, and welcome to Spotlight here on Hope TV, where you look and live. And on Spotlight, we always do our very best to bring you persons who are impacting our society in the direction of light. And oh, how we need the light, especially in a year like this when there's so much going on. And we just need to hear again and again that we need to be people who walk in the light, even in very competitive times. And here on Spotlight, we do our best to bring to you such kind of persons who are in different ways, guiding our community in the good ways of God and godliness. And we are happy to have with us Rabbi. A rabbi, actually in Hebrew should be Haraf. Haraf. You can correct me, sir, if you that's yeah. And he is the chief rabbi here in East Africa, and also leads the Nairobi synagogue. And we are happy to have a conversation with him because as Christians, we always know that our Christianity has Jewish roots, and so having constant conversation is very, very healthy for us. And so we want to welcome Rabbi Rabbi Nathaniel Kosovitz. And we are very happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
On Spotlight and on Hope TV.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, every time we have a conversation around Israel, you know, Kenyans are very alert because many times Kenyans want to know that there is a relationship with Israel. They want to hear it positively.
Yeah.
Because they feel that being a friend of Israel is a good thing, has some divine mystical value.
I get that feeling a lot. Like when I walk around the street, people get very excited that I'm from Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kenyans just want to know that Israel is their friend. It's like there's a favor that comes from that direction this way. And so it's very important for many Kenyans that we know that Israel is our friend. Now, welcome to Kenya.
Thank you.
Welcome to East Africa. Welcome to Nairobi. And I think it's just right for us to start with, what does Nathaniel mean, your name?
So my name means Nathanael, God gave. Pretty much every Hebrew name actually has a meaning. The word El is God, so a lot of names have that in Nathanael, Mataniah. Okay, the ending that has to do with God and the connection to there.
Okay, God gave.
Yeah.
That sounds like Samuel, you know. When we read the name
so
Samuel.
Shmuel is...
Because I asked...
God heard, yeah.
God heard, all right. What's interesting, names with meaning.
Yeah.
And especially godly meaning. Now, when we also read your name, Kasovets, it also has some Russian-ish taste.
It's Eastern European. It's the family name... Vits means came from or the sons of. So it was a city on the border between Romania and Hungary. And my grandfather and great-grandfather were born in the same house, years apart, but one was Romanian, one was Hungarian. It was a city that used to be called Kosov. That's where the name came from. Now it's called Plăpuș. Today it is in Romania, and it's right off the border of Hungary. During the time of the Holocaust, everybody was escaping, and some people managed, you take the name with you and write it down. Where did you come from? Kosov. Kosovich, you hail from Kosov. They were actually one of the only families that survived from the Holocaust by escaping early enough.
Okay, let's stay with that, because when you mention the Holocaust, it's an event that the world is aware of, and there's a lot of history.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to never again, that such a thing should never happen again. Now, your family, you've just mentioned a little bit about your connection and your experience of that Holocaust, that whole experience. Can you tell us more about that? You, your family, the Holocaust, any other links that you may have?
So actually, both sides of my family escaped from the Holocaust. On my father's side, they escaped beforehand, which made it easier. On my mother's side, is my grandfather was in Germany and escaped during the Holocaust. They actually had a really interesting story because my great-grandfather was a general in the German army during World War I. And they took him and put him into a work camp. And this was right in the beginning of the Holocaust. It was before they were exterminating Jews. And my grandfather's oldest sister went in and started yelling at the Nazis and saying, "He outranks all of you, how dare you do this to him?" And she bribed them, gave them a few diamonds, and they let him go. And on the way out, he died from a sickness that he got from the conditions just by being over there. And they made it to America. The rest of the family made it to America. And my grandmother, also from my mother's side, her father, who I'm named for, my second and third name is Aryeh Leib, which means Lionheart, and I'm named for him. He was running around Eastern Europe telling people the Nazis are coming. He was in Belgium and telling people that the Nazis were coming. He was on the top 10 most wanted list of the Nazis at the time. There's actually letters that he wrote while he was throwing them out of the train, passing by different villages so that people knew to escape and get out of there. So in different Holocaust museums around the world, some of them have made it there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, quite a history there.
Yeah.
Let's come to you as a person.
Yeah.
Specifically as the Kaf Rabbi. How has the Holocaust impacted your faith as a person?
There's a story by Rav Shlomo Karlebach. It was the singing rabbi lived in Israel, lived in America. Very interesting personality. He passed away about 27 years ago. And he survived the Holocaust also as a kid, managed to escape a bit early. And there was a convention of Holocaust survivors. And as always, this question comes up. And he was asked, to answer it. And one guy was telling his story over there and said, since the Holocaust, I'm not a religious person. So since the Holocaust, I can no longer believe in God. He says, why? He says, well, there was someone in the Holocaust, in the cabin that we were in, that managed to sneak in a pair of tefillin. Tefillin are, I don't know how to say it in English, but we put them on when we pray. And when a man over the age of 13 prays, so you take it, you put it on your arm and on your head, and it is a very important mitzvah, commandment that we do. And he snuck it into the concentration.
Kind of a scarf? Or?
No, it's a box with a string around it, and it has in it little scrolls that have different parts from the Torah in it that say that this is the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that connects us in a way during prayer, puts you in a focus. The one on the head represents a crown. The one on the arm is strength, and it's parallel to the heart, to keep it close to the heart so that you remember to stay focused also with your mind, also with your heart to God.
And you call it the what?
Tefillin.
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 Yes.
All right.
So it's a very important mitzvah, and we put it on every morning that is not Shabbat or a holiday, and we put it on for prayer. Now, there was one guy who managed to sneak it in to the camp, and he would let anyone who wants to use it, he would let them use it in exchange for half of their rations of food. And he said, when I saw someone using religion for their advantage like that, I no longer was able to be connected, no longer was able to respect a God that would let this happen. I'm done, I finished. And then someone else got up and said, I was also in that camp, and I wasn't religious, and I became religious. And he said, by looking at that person and seeing how many people are lining up and willing to give away half their rations for a connection with God, it brought me closer. It's very complicated because it is one of the biggest questions that is asked constantly is how did the Holocaust happen? How does it affect us? No one stays the same after an event like that. But the question is, do we understand really what's going on? Are we, where's our point of view? Are we looking from we're looking from a very narrow point of view and saying, this is not fair what's happening right now. But in the grand scheme of things, looking in a big picture, where you can't compare. And there's horrible things that happened, and you'll never hear me saying anything otherwise. I do not excuse it in any way. But we left Egypt and we received the Torah, right? So we go through that. We go through that building, that tough time of slavery, and then we receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. Okay? We are taken from all around the world into this Holocaust and abused and massacred. Atrocities that the world has never seen. It's why it's not just called, it's not compared to anything else. It is a Holocaust. It has its own name. And to call anything else a Holocaust is a disgrace. But when you look at it and you say, we went through this, and then we come and we create the state of Israel, from that, would we have been able to without it? Okay, would we have realized that where we belong without it? And this is a very big question, because the question of where do we belong? Do we belong around the world? Do we belong in Israel? Jews have been exiled from Israel for the past 2,000 years. We've been scattered around the world. Whenever we start feeling too comfortable in a place, the world reminds us that we don't belong, reminds us of our duties to go back to Israel, to keep the commandments, to be connected as a nation to God, to the Torah, to the land. And it was a very, very painful wake-up call, but I feel very much that it was a wake-up call.
Okay. You've talked about two people who one became saved, through that experience. In a camp, one became religious, the other one left religiosity. And let's come fast forward to the present time in Israel.
Yeah.
And we know that there is, when we read the Torah, we find that it governs the people, right? The people of Israel. But what would you say has been the effect of secular living on the Israel community?
So understanding the demographic of Israel is kind of complicated without living there, really, and understanding that as much as we would like people to be connected, we're in a very different reality today. A reality that everybody is trying to find their own connection, their own way, their own path. Some people are more connected, some people are less. So I think that we still have a big religious community in Israel. We have ultra-Orthodox also, the Haredi, okay? We have Hasidic Jews, and we have also non-religious, traditional, outside of Israel we have conservative reform, we have many different types. But I feel like everybody's trying to find their own place of where Judaism meets them. There are those, of course, like in every religion, that don't want a connection, that say it is outdated. I don't feel the need to do what our ancestors have done and kind of just push everything away. It's not so simple. It's not so simple to push everything away. I remember a friend who decided he was not going to be religious, and he said some things weren't so difficult for him, right? To stop praying, to stop being connected, whatever. But there was one thing that was very complicated for him. It was very hard for him to eat pork. He says because it is so embedded in the religion that we eat kosher. Okay, we eat certain foods, we don't eat other foods. And he said eating pork was really, really hard for him to do because it pushed him. But he said, but I wanted nothing to do with it, so I pushed through. Okay, so there are people who want nothing to do with it. I think that when we look at a historical point of view and we try to understand where the non-religious part of Judaism comes in to play, I think that we have a very strong, we need to think the non-religious part that pushed for creating the State of Israel. The State of Israel was created actually not from a religious place historically, and this is, we can speak about this all day, but after the Romans come and they destroy the Second Temple, and we have the rebellion of Bar Kokhba, okay? Bar Kokhba gets up to fight against the Romans. He says it is time between the destruction of the first temple and when we built the second one. It was 70 years. 70 years have passed. It is our sign to get up and fight against the Romans and rebuild the third temple. And he lost that war. He got full of it in the end. He gets up and one of the rabbis says, "I will pray for you to succeed." And at a certain point, after so many victories, he says, whether you pray or don't, it does not matter, I will win anyway. And he loses that battle. This is a very big fundamental part of Judaism, is understanding prayer has a very strong place. And the fact that he neglected it is one of the reasons that we attribute that loss. So he loses the battle and we get exiled all around the world. And there was instituted a law, they were called the 3 promises, that we will not try to bring Mashiach, the Messiah, we will not try to build the temple before it is time, because we weren't ready for another type of exile like that. We are not going to push God to bring the inevitable before it's time. And this was a big, big deal. Incidentally, that's around when Christianity is starting, around the same time. But this is a big understanding of why the Jews of the diaspora stayed in the diaspora for so long and became very, very embedded in the cultures over there. There was a lot of assimilation. And at a certain point, not only because of the Holocaust, one of the stories is the Dreyfus Institute, that there was a lot of anti-Semitism starting up in the world, a lot of pogroms, later on the Holocaust, but there was the Zionistic movement of we need a homeland again. There was actually a talk about it being in Uganda, which was, imagine having 15 million Jews now in East Africa, what the demographics would be. But that was a talk by Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl was not a religious man. Israel was pushed from different places, some religious, some not, but creating a Jewish state did not come from a religious place. The religious actually joined it. So with everything that's happening right now, like there's conflicts in everything. There's a lot of conflicts in religion and a lot of conflicts that are going on inside the Jewish people between the religious and the non and everything. And it's nice to remember that without the non-religious, we would not have pushed ourselves to come and build a state.
So it's pretty complicated, especially when you
Yes.
bring the religious and the non-religious and those dynamics and how that also represents the sovereignty of God. It's complicated, as you say.
Yeah.
But thank you for that. You mentioned Uganda. Let's just move to the neighbor, just not too far, but Ethiopia, right?
Yeah.
Because Ethiopia, when we read, they seem to have a place where they say there is the Ark of the Covenant. Well, I know you enlighten us. Your work is to enlighten us here. There's a particular place where they say the Ark of the Covenant, rested there. And it's a sacred site. We just want to hear it from you also. What's the understanding of that?
So I don't know what their take is in Ethiopia on that. The Ark of the Covenant, the menorah, right? All of the things that were in the temple, all of these very holy items to us, were all taken by the Romans when they conquered Jerusalem. So when they conquered Jerusalem, they take it, they bring it back to Rome as a present to the Caesar. The Caesar later on becomes, we're talking about a few generations later, becomes Christian. they becomes Catholic, the Vatican is created, and a lot of these things go into the Vatican. These are speculations at this point, because the Vatican will not conform nor deny that it is there. But that is the most likely place for all of these lost relics to be found.
All right. So I mean, the Ethiopians can also listen to that as well as they as they understand what they have. Now, I mean, coming here in Kenya, there are some communities, local communities here, that feel that they are local. They are very connected to Israel.
The Kikuyu.
The Kikuyu look like the Kikuyu, for instance. And they look at their laws and they look at their traditions and they feel they belong. You know, they are so huge connections. And I mean, I don't know how you understand that, how you appreciate that as well.
First of all, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It's very nice to find connections with people, even if it's just on a human level, to be able to connect with people. I have several Kikuyu friends that I've sat and talked theology with, and there is a lot of things that overlap, at least, you know, in the religious Kikuyu belief when you get into more of the mystical side, okay? We're very, very wary of idol worshiping, okay? So like a lot of these things are gonna end over there, the split goes to when something moves on to idol worshiping. You know, there isn't rain, you go up to the mountain to pray. All of these things, a specific place to pray and praying to gods and stuff like that. So idol worshiping in Judaism is one of the 10 commandments. Like, we take that very, very seriously. But when you talk theology and the mystical side, what we call Kabbalah, okay? So there's a lot of things that they are able to understand, that I found that other people, you know, when I have conversations with, you know, Christians, they don't have that same understanding as the Kikuyu. Like, it's very interesting.
And just again asking.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is an area of research, because how come that a community that is out here is so similar? There could be others around Africa as well.
Yeah.
But what does the research on the side of the Jewish faith, what does it reveal in terms of those connections?
Well, the question is, again, what is the Jewish ideal? The Jewish ideal for the world is not to be Jewish. The Jewish ideal for the world is to be good people and to realize there's one God, not to kill, not to steal, basic human decency things. And this idea has spread a lot thanks actually to Christianity. You know, there's a lot of overlapping theologies between Judaism and Christianity, but you have, when you talk about Abraham sends out students around the world. There's a lot of parallels when you talk about theology with the Buddhists in China. Okay, how did it get there? What does it have to do with that? Judaism dates back, receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai dates back 3,333 years this year. Okay, Abraham is about 1,200, 1,400 years before that. Okay, you're talking about like historically, okay, we are the oldest religion, and spreading students around the world and the theology spreading is not impossible. A lot of these things are speculations because we weren't there 1,000 years ago to find out. But when you're talking about ideologies and stuff and ideas spreading around the world, there's virtually no idol worshiping except in some places in Far East Asia and in some places in Africa, right? That has to do with the 3 monotheistic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, right? Like, all of these have spread God's name in different ways, but the fact is there is no more idol worshiping. So a lot of these things have had parallels. It could be that you had merchants coming through Africa. You could have, like, there are a lot of parallels. And you mentioned the Ethiopians beforehand. The Ethiopians, there's a large group of Jewish Ethiopians that just returned to Israel, you know, in the past 30 years. And they have been Jews, real Jews, there this whole time, right? You're talking about almost 2,000 years of Jews being in the region. People rub off on each other, okay? The Ashkenazi Jews are influenced a lot by European culture and by Christianity in one way or another, okay? The Sephardic Jews that were in the Muslim countries, a lot of them were influenced by Islam. Like, there are, at least culturally, so
Okay. All right. Let's hope, as you say, it's complicated, but it's also very real. It's undeniable, these connections, as you say. Maybe something really off the heavy stuff. Are you married?
I am married. Been married. We're celebrating our 8th year anniversary in a month.
Okay. Yeah. Good to know. We'll take a short break, and then after that we'll continue. And especially, we would want to know whether you've always wanted to be a rabbi. Young people have many ambitions, and we want to hear how it is that you grew to become a Raf. And not just a Raf, but Raf around the world. So, viewer, we are talking to Rabbi Nathaniel Kasovitz, who is the chief rabbi here in East Africa. And he's telling us about many things about the Jewish religion, about his personal life as well as a religious person. And you want to hear more about him and the Jewish faith, so stay with us. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back. Viewer, welcome back. We are talking to Rabbi Nathaniel Kasovitz, who is a chief rabbi in East Africa and oversees also the Nairobi Synagogue, and just amazing insights concerning the Jewish faith and also him as a person. And just before the break, we wanted to know how you became a rabbi. And young people have lots of ambitions, and I mean, there's so many options, right? Can you tell us your journey to becoming a Gaf?
So, I never had any intention of becoming a rabbi, or a teacher, or anything. This was not what I had planned out for me. But God works in mysterious ways, and I was very, very much pushed in that way. In different ways. So I was in a yeshiva. A yeshiva is where you go and you do religious studies. Before I went into the army, I was meant to go into a combat unit, and I was in an accident a few months before I was going to go into the army, and I got demoted. Like, as soon as you're injured, I wasn't able to run or carry enough weight, and I was no longer able to be combat. So they said, you can work as a teacher. Now, I was a terrible student for 12 years in school. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but the job sounded somewhat interesting. I said, okay, I'll go with that. And while I was there, I started realizing that I have a knack for teaching, especially with the troubled guys, because I've been kicked out of so many systems as a student.
I'm sure many young people who are watching are relating.
I was the absolute worst student. When I became a teacher, I actually called up my teachers to apologize, because I realized what hell I put them through. But I said everything. I would do anything except go into teaching. And then I ended up finishing the army. I got married while I was in the army. And when I was looking for a job, I got offered a job in a school working with some troubled kids. I said no a few times. Eventually, I took the job. Then, in the end of the year, I said no again to another few jobs like that, and ended up taking another one like that. And it just kept on happening to me that those were the jobs that ended up fitting my personality the best. And I ended up just moving from one educational job to the next. I ended up teaching informally for about 7 years now. And then I was offered, my wife and I were discussing going out and working with the Jews of the diaspora, Jews living outside of Israel. And I said, okay, as long as it's not a rabbinic position. I will go and I will be something informal in, a campus or something. And we said, okay. And then we started the program and they said, if you want, that we have a rabbinic program for learning. And I said, absolutely not. I do not want to do this. And then I went and I met the rabbi, and he was out of this world amazing. And I said, this sounds like it's going to be fun enough that it's worth trying. And I said, I will do it as long as you don't offer me rabbinic positions. And then they offered me a rabbinic position. And it was here in Kenya. And I couldn't turn it down. It was just too interesting.
Okay.
And the community is amazing, and Kenya is amazing. So we're really enjoying it.
All right. I mean, quite a journey full of so many no's, like Noah. And as you're thinking about that, and as a young person, I'm thinking about the many young people in Kenya and around the world also who are becoming very suspicious of religion. And they do embrace maybe other forms of what we can call like mystical identities, but in terms of what we can call like core religion, they kind of are staying away from that. Maybe you can tell us about what the value of religion could be to a young person.
It's a heavy question. It's not so simple. First of all, this is not a Kenyan problem. This is a worldwide problem. That people are becoming very non-religious and very religious at the same time. You have two very, very extremes. It has to do with a lot of things that have to do with technology and the world becoming very, very global, everybody being exposed to everything. And kids are exposed from a very young age to being able to think on their own. When I was a kid, the answer to a lot of questions was because you're told to do so. God tells you to do this, so you do it. And that was an answer that worked, even for my generation, and the further you go back, it applies more. But it's very, very, very hard to connect when it's because I told you so. And people want answers, especially younger kids, teenagers want answers, want to be able to think. Judaism is based off of questions, okay? One of our holiest nights in the year is Passover. And the commandment of Passover is to tell the story of our people to your children and to encourage them to ask questions. We do 1,000 things that night that are to provoke questions. We do a lot of strange customs that we wouldn't do during the year so that the kids will ask, why are we doing this? Because asking, why are we doing this, is the basis of thinking. It's the basis of religion. And if you're willing to think for yourself, you're going to be able to get to a very different place. I think that the importance of religion, as a religious person, the importance of religion is there's real value to it. There's the truth. You follow the truth, you go with it, you understand it. There's a lot to that. And from a non-religious place, it connects you, okay? I was on the border of not being religious, okay? And in Judaism, it's a very serious thing. But my parents are amazing, wonderful people. And their approach is, I do it because I'm told so. And for me, that didn't resonate as well. And I was starting to leave because I was not willing to accept because I told you so. It doesn't resonate with the thinking young mind that is all over the world now. And I got to learn in a Hasidic environment by a good friend of mine, Rav Yonatan Hirsharen, who brought me in, and we talked a lot about the different approaches in Judaism. And a lot of it actually, like, you can find it in your own religions in different places, but there's two aspects of worshiping God. there's a pasuk, a passage that says, "Ki ma Hashem Elokecha rotzeh mimach, ki im la'ava oto v'le'ira oto." What does God want from you but to worship Him, to love Him and to fear Him? Now, the fear Him is actually a mistranslation. It's to respect Him, okay? And this is important because a lot of times when I have conversations with Christians, the misunderstandings that we have has to do with translation, is the fact that you're reading it from a translated Bible, you end up having only one approach. If you take the word ir'ah and you turn it into fear, then God is a vengeful God. God is a scary God. But if you take the word ir'ah and it means also respect, then you can understand the different relationship. Mm-hmm. And I sat and talked with him a lot about this, with my rabbi about this, about these two different approaches. And the approach of ir'ah, of respect, is very much how you should approach, let's say, your father. Your father asks you to do something, you do it out of respect. You're not afraid, usually, that he's going to beat you or kill you if you don't do it. But you respect your father to do something because he asked you to do it. But if your child asks you to do something, you do it out of love. And it can be the same action, your child, your wife, you're doing it out of a different place. Now, it's not that I don't love my father, and it's not that I don't respect my wife, but it has to do with that understanding of if I'm taking out the trash for my father, or I'm taking out the trash for my wife, it's the same action from two very different places, right? Even if I'm doing it so my father doesn't need to take out the trash or my wife doesn't need to, they're different. One is respect, one is love. And the question is, why am I worshiping God? Why do I do anything for God? Okay, and this is a big basis in Judaism, is it's not that God is here to do things for me, it's I'm here to do things for God, okay? And this is a big, if you understand, it's a big theological argument between Judaism and other monotheistic religions. I am here to serve God, okay? So how am I doing it? Am I doing it out of respect or out of love? Am I afraid of the consequence of punishment if I don't do something? Or am I doing it because I genuinely love God and want the world to be better? I want God to have that pleasure. And once I understood that, a lot of things changed in my life because I was no longer doing things out of fear or obligation. I was doing things because I want to. So when I woke up to go in the morning and pray, I wasn't dragging my feet, I was going dancing, okay? I was dancing and skipping my way to the synagogue, because that was something that I wanted to do as opposed to being forced to do.
Okay. Very comprehensive response there. And many people are curious, especially Christians, and even just people who are open to spirituality. They are curious to know about the main threads of the Jewish faith, right? And if you were to summarize that for us, what would you say the Jewish faith is about?
The Jewish faith is about, it depends again on the approach that you're going to be looking at, but
you can give us your approach.
My approach is tikkun olam. Tikkun olam literally translates into fixing the world. Okay, the passage is tikkun olam b'malchut Shaddai, fixing the world in God's kingdom, and it's an understanding of what am I here for? Like why am I in Kenya? Right? Like why trouble myself? Okay, and it's a real question that I had to think about a lot before coming, because the community over here has various different types of affiliation. But as far as real religious observance, there aren't so many. So the amount of food, for example, I only eat kosher food, okay? So kosher food means that it has to be processed a certain way, can't have certain things in it, It's for anyone who's listening that knows what halal is. So halal has a supervision, and it needs to not have pork. It's very, very simple in that manner. For us, you can't have milk and meat together. You can't have things that derived from non-kosher animals. You can't have the amount of food coloring that isn't kosher, the amount like breads over here, the yeasts that aren't kosher. So there's a lot more limited. In Israel, I spoke my language. I had my friends, my family, everybody around me, and yet we decided to get up and leave the comfort of our home to come out to the middle of Africa.
Fix the world.
Right? For what? For fixing the world. What does that mean to fix the world? And this is like very, very fundamental for me, is it means making the world a bit better every day, okay? And this is something that I feel is an obligation on all of us, okay? There's been a lot of misconception about what our role is in the world as Jews. A lot of anti-Semitic preachers have gone up and said, the Jews think they're better and they this. It's not that. It has to do with we have more obligations, not necessarily more reward. Like we have an obligation to the world, okay? It's like a teacher, right? So in our place of our obligations to help the world, right? We'll talk a bit about the Noahites, okay? The Jewish ideal for a non-Jew is to be a good non-Jew. We don't want everybody to convert into Judaism. It's a lot of responsibilities. What do we want? We want the world to be a better place. We want people to treat each other well, not to kill, not to steal. Okay?
Oh, yeah, just when you're mentioning that, you've just talked about the Noahide.
Yeah.
Now, tell us more about that, the Noahide.
So the Noahide, there's a Noahide community here in Kenya, around 100 members or so, that is forming and keeps on growing daily. But the Noahide community they live their lives as non-Jews according to a Jewish ideal, okay? So other religions, Christianity, Islam, the ideal is to make everybody believe what we believe, right? Islam went around the world saying, believe what I believe or else. Christianity for a long time did the same, okay? That's how Christianity, a lot of it came to Kenya as well. But when you're talking about the Jewish ideal, is actually a lot of it has to do, is influenced by the Christians and by Islam, to not become a religion that converts by force. We do not make it easy for people to convert. Like if anyone here wants to convert, you need to go to South Africa, sit and learn for about 4 or 5 years, go through circumcision. It's a whole long, tedious process. And even after that, there's still a good chance that you won't be able to do the conversion. Okay, like it is not meant to be easy for anyone. And our ideal is for everybody to be non-Jewish. Just be a good non-Jew. Be a good person, okay? Don't eat parts of living animals, okay? This is an ideal. Don't go and make sacrifices to idols, okay? There's a lot about worshiping idols in that. There's a lot about believing in one God, right? It's also the same ideals that the monotheistic religions have. We want everybody to believe in God, okay? But we want it to come from you. We want you to believe in God. And the Noahide community lives like that. They meet up, they sit, they learn, they have their own books of what that means to be a non-Jew, because as an identity, it's very complicated, right? It's trying to find out, it's not really my own religion, but I'm fitting into someone else's belief system, in my own belief system. So there is a complication for them in it, but they're learning. And they pray, and they teach, and they make the world a better place by doing good for others.
So when you talk about the Noahide, it's a very interesting place, because the Jewish faith is a faith that many people want to know about.
Yeah.
So does it mean taking up the Jewish morality or taking up the Jewish identity?
Well, they are not Jewish. They don't see themselves as Jewish. They don't tell people that they're Jewish. when you ask them, they say, I am a Noahite. It is my belief in one God, okay? I believe that God took the Jews out of Egypt, created the world, right? Brought them to Israel, gave them Israel. Israel is the Jewish people's land, right? And there is a lot of working with the Jewish communities around the world. You have a lot of Noahites that work with the Jewish communities in their own way, but they're not Jewish, and a lot of them don't ever intend on doing a conversion, or it's not a hierarchy. That's the point. It's not a hierarchy. It's when you're familiar from the Torah, okay, that there are Kohanim, priests, Levites, and Israel, okay, the rest of the nation. It's not a hierarchy. We give respect to the Kohanim, to the priests, for their work that they do, the very holy work that they do, but they were the teachers. That was their job. They were teaching all around. So if I have to pick between an Israelite and a priest, there wasn't really that hierarchy. It's just, you have your job, you have your job. You're married, you have children. Okay?
Yeah.
Are they the same?
Oh, no.
No, each one's totally different, right? And I'm the oldest. I am not the leader out of my siblings. The next one is, okay? Right. He has a better leadership personality, so it naturally went to him in many, many ways, right? But I'm the oldest. Doesn't really matter. It's not a hierarchy. It's we each have different goals, we each have different purposes, we each have different things that we're aiming for.
Okay. Now, I'll ask, it's a heavy question, but I'll ask you to give us the simplest version of your understanding, because it would be interesting for the Christians. Jesus, who for the Christians is the Messiah, spoke a lot about love, right? A lot about love. But as you have rightly put it, in history, it was Christianity for a long time was very violent, right? Now, from where you stand, from where you stand as a rabbi, how do you understand how Jesus would preach love, but then the religion that comes out of it becomes violent for a long time? Of course, in the present times, the Christians are returning more to the love teachings and other than before. But how do you understand it in a brief way?
I'll try in a brief way.
Okay.
But you need to understand historical context to be able to understand where Christianity is born from. I feel like this is like a big part that people don't understand is Christianity is born out of a big feud that's going on in the Jewish world. We're talking about the end of the Second Temple. The end of the Second Temple, the First Temple is destroyed for 3 sins, okay? Killing, adultery, and idol worshiping. That is the 3 reasons that we are told that the First Temple is destroyed. The Second Temple is destroyed for hate, okay? Jews hated each other, and there was a lot of inward fighting. And where does it come from? It came from the same exact problem that Christianity was created in that way, that a man who preached only love ended up creating a very violent religion for a very, very long time. It was focusing on one thing. We have 613 commandments. The Torah is perfect. It's flawless. The Torah tells us a list of non-kosher animals, okay? And it tells us exactly what they have. And in the past 3,000 years, not a single animal has been discovered that falls into that category, except these. We know exactly. It says the pig, it has split hooves, but it doesn't chew its cud. And it lists 4 or 5 animals like that, and then it says these are those animals that have these signs, and they're not kosher. Okay, now we have other ones, but these ones are like the signs of the ones that are not kosher because they have one sign and not the other. And 3,000 years, not a single one is found. That is godly, right? Like you don't make a gamble with like that and say, with something that could be proven otherwise. But 3,000 years, no one is able to find. And that's one example out of thousands of the fact that the Torah is perfect. And therefore, when Judaism made the same mistake that, in my opinion, Christianity was making at the same time, is taking one set of commandments, okay? We have the 2 tablets, right? The 10 commandments, we have the 2 tablets. They're not all of them, right? You're only 10 out of 613, but they're pillars. And on one side, we have the commandments between man and God, and the other one between man and fellow man, right? Love God, respect God, don't worship idols. And on the other hand, we have don't kill, don't steal, right? Like those are 2 separate tablets for different purposes. The Judaism at that point is focusing very much only on the right side of the tablets. They're only focusing on my connection with God. People are trying to be very, very spiritual. We're talking about purity and impurity. And they get to such a level that we're told about stories of people killing people over purity and impurity, okay? That's not Judaism. That lost proportions. And Jesus was growing up in a Jewish home, right? He was born Jewish, he lived Jewish, he died Jewish. Christianity actually comes, about 100 years afterwards is really formed in that way. But he comes and he's growing up Jewish and he says, there's a basis of Judaism, right? Fixing the world. How do we fix the world? One of the Jewish ideals, and this is 1 out of 613 commandments, is love your neighbor like yourself. And it is a Jewish ideal. And it's an important one. And the question that you asked me beforehand of if you had to sum up Judaism, like there was a rabbi that was his answer around the time of Jesus. You're talking about a few hundred years beforehand, but this was learned. And he said, by a convert. A Roman guy wanted to come and convert. And he comes and he says, I want you to teach me the whole Torah on 1 foot, okay? Which was also an expression, but also is very, very literal in the Roman times. I would stand on 1 foot. When I fall down, you stop talking, okay? Like, that is how much time you have to talk, okay? Which means you have 2 minutes to say what you need to say. And he was asked, tell me the whole Torah on 1 foot. And he said, okay, love your neighbor like yourself. And he says, I'm still standing. He says, everything else is interpretations, right? Like, so Jesus is growing up with that mentality and says, okay, we went to this extreme, let's go back. But instead of going back over here, he goes back to 1 commandment. Now, when you take something perfect, right? Your wife cooks?
Oh, perfectly.
Perfectly, right? Yeah. Now, if she's making something and she decides to take out a few ingredients just because she's not in the mood, right? It damages the dish, right? You lose flavor, you lose texture, it doesn't cook as well, it doesn't rise. That's what happened. He was preaching love. And I do believe that Christianity today, for the most part, is heading back to very much the original of what he was preaching. But after he's crucified by the Romans, there's a lot of looking for a place of blame and where is it going? And people don't know how to deal with it and say, we need to spread the name of Jesus. And when it's not accepted with love, it gets accepted by force. And it worked. Christianity worked phenomenally in that matter, for almost 2,000 years. You're talking about a religion who expanded. There's no one on planet Earth that does not know Christianity, that has not heard of Jesus, that has not heard of God, right? Because of this, because it has spread to all corners of the earth. But it was spread very, very, very aggressively because you take something from perfection and focus only on that and neglect the rest. That's what happens. And Judaism made the same mistake, and we paid for that mistake. 2,000 years of exile. Okay, like this was, Judaism and Christianity are having very, very parallel journeys at the same time. But Christianity was one of the biggest punishments to Judaism that we ever had, for that matter. We weren't focusing on loving each other, and we got a religion that attacked us for almost 2,000 years based off of love, right? Like it's a very low kick.
And it's a paradox also.
In a lot of ways. There's a lot of similarities, like if you're reading from the Torah, then a lot of the things that you're going to be reading are going to be parallel. A lot of the charity and a lot of doing good for others, we have a lot of similarities. So. All right. Yeah.
No, it's amazing just how these conversation just goes so fast.
Yeah.
And I would want to welcome you here again, and then we can handle very specific questions so that we can enlighten our viewers, for instance, about the end times. There's a big thing about hell and heaven. And people would want to understand, that from a rabbi, Goff, Again, what you've talked about, just the whole commandment of love and how that becomes the epicenter. What's the good of this? If it was pursued in its real sense, what is the good of it? Would want to hear a lot about the laws and also want to hear about how it is that when it's so difficult to actually convert into a Jew, right? But we are so grateful that you came here today. Next time you'll be having a fleet of questions. And we just want to hear again enlightenment from the rabbi's point of view. Welcome to Kenya.
Thank you so much.
And we pray that you stay here. We'll be, in a big way, fixing this part of the world to the glory of God and to the joy of man.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Viewers, we've been talking to Rabbi Nathaniel Kasovitz, Gaff, Chief Gaff. And it's just interesting. All the things that he's shared and just whets an appetite for us to understand more about the Jewish faith and how it relates also with our Christian faith as well. Again, we'll have him back. And thank you for being part of this spotlight. And may God bless you. And as we would say, keep loving. Because in loving, you will thrive and build a community that is actually fixed by love. Thank you for watching. This has been Spotlight.